Welcome to my channel. This is the most terrifying monster I've ever seen. This happened more than 20 years ago, but I still remember it like it was yesterday. It was late at night when I woke up for a quick drink of water. And when I came back to bed, I could have sworn I heard my husband say something. I don't remember what. But what I do remember is turning over in bed and seeing my wife sitting upright in bed, staring straight ahead of her. She wasn't making a sound. Her eyes were wide open, and I could have sworn that she was breathing, but her chest wasn't rising or falling. I sat up in bed, not really knowing what to say. I must have looked scared because my wife turned her head towards me and finally she spoke. "Did you just wake up?" she asked in a normal voice. Then she turned back around to face forwards again and said, "Go back to sleep. I'll live for you now." Before I could ask any questions, my wife threw back the covers and jumped out of bed. I thought that she was going for a drink of water. Instead, she went for the heavy oak wardrobe and opened the door. She disappeared inside. There was no way I was going back to sleep after this. I got out of bed and walked over to the wardrobe. I had no idea what had just happened. My wife was nowhere to be seen. I tried opening the wardrobe doors, but they were locked. I couldn't believe what I was seeing. Had my wife gone crazy? Had she been possessed by some sort of demon? Did I need to call a priest? I didn't know what to do. That's when I heard a whisper coming from inside the wardrobe. It was my wife's voice. It was weak and raspy, like she was talking through a mouth full of cotton. "Go away," she whispered. "Leave me alone." I didn't want to leave her alone, but I had no choice. So I left the wardrobe door wide open and went back to bed. I kept hearing my wife whispering to me, telling me to go away, but I ignored her. The first few hours of the morning passed quickly. The sun began to rise. I could hear birds singing outside. I could smell bacon and eggs cooking downstairs. And then I heard my wife get out of bed. I closed my eyes and hoped she would come back and talk to me. She didn't. When I opened my eyes, the wardrobe door was shut, and there was a note on the bed where she had been sleeping. "I love you," it read. "Don't look for me today. I'll explain everything later." I got up and went to the bathroom to wash my face. I was still half asleep and confused. Why had my wife behaved so strangely? Why did she want me to go away? What had happened to her? But then I saw it. Staring back at me from the mirror was a face I knew well. It was my wife's face. Only one side of her face was visible. The other half was hidden behind a blue pillowcase. At first, I thought maybe she had an injury on her face, and that's why she had covered it with a pillowcase. But then I noticed that the pillowcase was soft and pliable. It was like touching a liquid. And as soon as my fingers touched the pillowcase, it solidified into the shape of a human face. I screamed and ripped my hand away, fell back onto the tiles. I looked down at my hand. There was nothing on it, no sign that I had ever touched the pillowcase. I stood up, stared at the pillowcase. It took all of its strength not to scream again. I ran out of the bathroom and went looking for my wife. She was nowhere to be found. The house was empty. No doubt she had gone to work. Normally, we would have had breakfast together, talked about how we were going to spend the day. But this time I was too frightened to eat. Too frightened to do anything but stare at the mirrors. All day I spent time looking at mirrors. Every time I did, the same thing happened. Half of my wife's face appeared in the mirror. The other half was obscured by something soft and pliable. And every time I touched the soft thing, it solidified into a perfect replica of half of my wife's face. It was like touching living metal. I felt sick to my stomach. I barely ate anything all day. I needed to tell someone what had happened to me. But who could I possibly tell? If I told the police, they would think I was insane. They would lock me up in a mental institution and never let me out. I had to keep this secret, find out what was going on all by myself. I remembered that my wife worked in a hospital pharmacy. Maybe I could talk to somebody there, a doctor or a nurse, somebody who understood things about the human body. I drove to the hospital, parked the car, walked into the main entrance, went up to reception, and asked to speak to my wife. The receptionist tried calling my wife several times, but she didn't answer. It was lunchtime, so the receptionist suggested I come back in an hour or so. And hopefully my wife would be back by then. I was getting increasingly frustrated. All I wanted to do was talk to my wife. But she wasn't there, and nobody could help me. While I was waiting, I decided to walk around the hospital and find a bathroom. I went through several corridors before I found one, and then I saw it. In one of the mirrors, I saw the unmistakable shape of my wife's face. I reached out to touch it, and once again, the soft flesh hardened into a face. When I pulled my hand away, I saw that my hand had changed. It was now the exact replica of my wife's hand. I screamed again and ran out of the bathroom. I had to get away from this place, from the hospital. But as soon as I stepped out into the corridor, I saw another face. It was in the mirror. It was the same face that I had seen in the bathroom. And it was grinning at me. I turned to run, but it was too late. The figure was moving fast. It moved past me, and when it did, I could see that it had no legs. It was like a floating head. And then it floated right through the wall. I watched in horror as it entered the wall and disappeared. What was that thing? What had happened to my wife? What was it trying to do to me? I didn't know the answers to these questions, but I knew I had to keep looking for them. I was determined to find out what was happening to me, even if it meant spending the rest of my life hiding from my wife. The next morning, I woke up early, and the first thing I did was look in the mirror. When I did, I saw my own face staring back at me. I was relieved, but it didn't last long. Soon enough, I started noticing small changes in my appearance. My hair seemed darker. My eyes looked deeper, set in their sockets. My skin looked clearer. I was almost glad when I saw my wife enter the room. "You look strange," she said, and I knew exactly what she was talking about. "Do you feel strange?" she asked. I hesitated, then lied to her and said, "No, not really. Just tired. I didn't want to scare her. I didn't know how much of a threat she was, if she was a threat at all." But that's when I noticed that all the mirrors in the house had been covered in newspaper. I asked my wife about it, but she acted like she didn't know what I was talking about. "Did I cover the mirrors?" she asked. "Yes. Why? I don't know," she replied. I guess I didn't want to see myself staring back at me, and that's when I knew that she was lying to me. Why else would she have covered the mirrors? Was she ashamed of how she looked? Had she been hiding her face from me? I wanted to rip the newspaper off the mirrors, but my wife stopped me. "Let's have breakfast," she said. "Then we'll go shopping. You can pick out a new wardrobe." I agreed. I had a feeling that if I didn't agree, she would become violent. At the store, I picked out several shirts, sweaters, and jackets. My wife looked nice, but I didn't like it. I kept seeing the faces in the mirrors. I kept seeing her hand, the hand that became my wife's face. We left the store, and my wife went straight to the bathroom. When she came out, she was wearing a nice black jacket. "I love it," she said. "It looks nice on you, doesn't it?" she added. "Really?" I said. I don't know. I had no idea that this jacket would become my worst nightmare. Every time I looked in the mirror, I saw the face of my wife, her real face, not the face that she showed me every day. Every time I looked in the mirror, I saw the face of the woman who wore my face. I never escaped the mirrors. To this day, I still see her sometimes. She watches me from the mirrors, and all I can do is hide.
If this story kept you on the edge of your seat, you won't want to miss our next episode. Be sure to hit that subscribe button and notification bell so you'll never miss any of our terrifying tales, and whispering shadows. Until next time, stay vigilant, stay scared, and we'll see you in the next video, if you dare.